The broken shield wasn't much to look at, but it was home to every melee Marine who passed through Station Gamma 12. The bar's Duraplast walls were scarred with the marks of 1,000 friendly scuffles, and the air recyclers struggled to keep up with the mix of human and alien breath that filled the space. I was sitting with my squad, celebrating our latest victory against a stubborn Fress holdout colony. My quantum-enhanced sword hung at my hip, its familiar way to comfort after 3 weeks of hard fighting. The bartender, an old Careth with faded warrior caste markings, kept our glasses full of something that might have been whiskey in a previous life. To the 5th Melee Marines, Sergeant Custer raised her glass, her ceremonial sword glinting under the station's harsh lighting. The aliens laughed when we brought swords to a plasma fight. They're not laughing anymore. We had just clinked our glasses when the door hissed open, admitting a squad of Commonwealth Elite Guard. Their power armor was pristine, lacking the battle scars that decorated our own gear. They moved with the artificial grace of soldiers who relied more on their suits' targeting systems than their own training. Well, their squad leader's voice carried across the bar, amplified by his helmet speakers. Look what we have here. The circus must be in town, they've got sword swallowers. My hand tightened around my glass, but I kept my voice level. Private Trent Martinez, 5th Melee Marine Division. I introduced myself, following protocol even though every instinct screamed for a less diplomatic response. Buy you folks a drink? The squad leader's helmet retracted, revealing a face that had probably never seen actual combat. His eyes fixed on my sword with undisguised contempt. Playing with ancient toys while the rest of us fight a modern war. That's cute. I took a slow breath, remembering my training. The Melee Marines hadn't revolutionized modern warfare by losing our tempers in bars. This ancient toy helped us clear out a Fress stronghold last week. Their energy barriers might stop plasma rounds, but they can't do much against quantum-enhanced steel. Please, another Elite Guard soldier stepped forward, his armor whining with each movement. Our latest combat data shows that the Mark VII plasma rifle has the highest confirmed kills in 3 sectors. We've got more firepower in one gun than your whole squad has in those ceremonial letter openers. Sergeant Custer set her glass down with deliberate care. Funny thing about data, she said, her voice carrying that dangerous edge I'd learned to recognize. It doesn't always tell the whole story, like how the Fress were winning the war until we brought swords to the fight. The Elite Guard squad leader laughed, but there was uncertainty in it. Everyone knew the stories about how the Melee Marines had turned the tide of the Fress war, how our primitive weapons had breached defenses that had repelled every conventional attack. That's ancient history, he declared, though his hand strayed unconsciously to his sidearm. And everyone knows the Fress were pushovers, walking acorns with delusions of grandeur. The real fighting is happening on the Orion front, where actual soldiers use actual weapons. The temperature in the bar seemed to drop several degrees. Even the Careth bartender's spots had shifted to warning colors. Calling the Fress pushovers wasn't just an insult to their fallen warriors, it was a direct slight to every Melee Marine who'd fought and died to break their defenses. I stood slowly, my quantum matrix humming in sync with my rising anger. Around me, my squad did the same. The Elite Guard activated their helmet seals with electronic clicks, falling into defensive positions that their suits' combat computers probably rated as optimal. Maybe I suggested, keeping my hands conspicuously away from my sword, you'd like a practical demonstration of why the Melee Marines earned their reputation. The squad leader's smile was all teeth and no humor. You read my mind, sword boy. Just don't cry when your antiques fail against modern armor. As both groups squared off in the rapidly clearing bar space, I couldn't help but smile. Some lessons, it seemed, had to be learned the hard way. But before either side could make a move, the familiar sound of quantum spurs humming against metal decking made everyone freeze. The knights had arrived. The sound of quantum spurs hitting metal decking had an effect I'd only seen once before, during a Fress surrender ceremony. Every head in the bar turned toward the entrance, where 3 figures stood silhouetted against the station's harsh external lighting. Texas Knights. Their power armor bore the scars of 100 void battles, each mark a story written in plasma burns and impact craters. The Lone Star emblems on their pauldrons seemed to catch every scrap of light in the room, and their quantum spurs left trails of blue fire with each deliberate step. Our squad's hands dropped from our sword hilts immediately. Even the Elite Guard seemed to deflate, their pristine armor suddenly looking gaudy and artificial next to the battle-tested plate of the knights. The lead knight touched the brim of his Stetson, scanning the scene with the kind of casual intensity that made both my hearts skip a beat. "Evening, folks," he drawled, the words somehow filling the entire bar, despite being barely above a whisper. "Seems we got ourselves a disagreement about martial prowess." The elite guard squad leader, to his credit, tried to maintain his composure. "Sir, we were just explaining to these traditionalists about the superiority of modern combat systems." "That's so." The knight's voice carried a hint of amusement. His hand rested casually on the hilt of a sword that looked old enough to have seen combat on old Earth itself. "And what conclusion did y'all reach?" Before anyone could answer, the second knight spoke up, her voice carrying that distinctive New Austin accent. "Looks to me like they were about to reach a mighty physical conclusion, brother." The third knight, built like a cargo loader and wearing armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, chuckled. "The sound reminded me of quantum drives spooling up for a jump. Reminds me of that dust-up on New Gonzales, when those Commonwealth boys thought their targeting computers could outshoot good old-fashioned skill." The bar had gone so quiet you could hear the station's shield generators humming 20 decks below. The elite guard squad was starting to look distinctly uncomfortable, their combat stance shifting to something more appropriate for meeting superior officers. The lead knight took 3 more steps forward, quantum spurs leaving smoking footprints in the deck plating. "Let me simplify this discussion for y'all," he said, eyes moving from face to face. "The last thing most aliens see is a glowing Texan sword." One of the elite guard soldiers made a sound that might have been the start of a protest. The female knight casually activated her sword, its quantum matrix humming with the stored memories of countless battles. The protest died unspoken. "Now then," the lead knight continued, as if he hadn't just silenced a room with 7 words, "I reckon this establishment serves some decent whiskey. Why don't we all sit down, and we'll tell you about the early days of melee combat in space. Back when we had to convince folks that bringing a sword to a plasma fight wasn't just sane, it was necessary." Nobody argued. The elite guard found seats with remarkable speed, their earlier bravado completely evaporated. My squad settled in too, trying not to look too smug about the turn of events. The Kareth bartender's spots were cycling through colors I'd never seen before as he served the knights their drinks. The lead knight caught my eye and gave me a slight nod, the kind of acknowledgement that would fuel my war stories for years to come. As the knights began to speak, sharing tales of battles that had already become legend, I found myself reflecting on what it meant to be a melee Malayan. We weren't just soldiers who carried swords, we were the inheritors of a tradition that had changed the face of modern warfare. And while we might be damn good at what we did, the Texas Knights were something else entirely. They were living legends who had mastered both the ancient and the modern, warriors who could end a bar fight with 7 words or win a war with glowing swords. The elite guard leader caught my eye across the bar and raised his glass slightly, a silent acknowledgement that some lessons are best learned through humility. I returned the gesture, remembering my own first encounter with the knights and how it had changed my understanding of what it meant to be a warrior. Outside the viewport, Station Gamma 12 continued its eternal orbit around a nameless gas giant. But inside the broken shield, time seemed to stand still as we listened to the knights speak of honor, tradition, and the eternal truth that some battles are won not with technology, but with steel and skill. And somewhere out in the void, I knew, other knights were riding the quantum trails between stars, their spurs burning blue fire across the darkness, ready to remind anyone who forgot that the last thing most aliens see is, indeed, a glowing Texan sword. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave it a like and to subscribe if you'd like to see more. Feel free to comment and share it as well. With all that said, go on and check out the video in the top left. I think you might like it.